you so much for joining us, and to our viewers watching online. My name is Kendra Barnett. I am Adweek's senior tech reporter. Not to be also, Adweek is not the same as Advertising Week, so don't tag us when you mean to be tagging Advertising Week, please. But I'm very excited for this panel. Cracking it early. Sorry, just stay hydrated. Yeah. This is going to be a really fun one. I'm sure we're going to be talking about something you guys have never heard of called AI. It's a new thing. And, you know, the first thing to say is that we all know that investment in AI in this industry, in marketing and media, is skyrocketing. I think the latest data from Forrester suggests that over 90% of media agencies are experimenting with it in some way operationally. So sure, there's a lot of investment going in, but it can be difficult to, you know, parse out what's real and what's not real. And I think we can just start with the title of this session, which is, you know, less artificial, more intelligence. And I guess by that we mean that there are a lot of promises being made about what AI will be able to unlock for this industry. And you know, some of those might be somewhat empty promises. So we're here to talk more about the second part of that, intelligence, and how to make AI not just work, but work harder and make the most of the data already at your fingertips. So that being said, I'd like my lovely panel to introduce themselves. Just give me your name, your title, and maybe 5 to 10 words about what you do. I'm going to start with you, Jamie.
All right, first up. Hi, everyone. I am Jamie Seltzer. I am the Global Chief Data and Technology Officer for Havas Media Network. What do I do? I oversee the data strategy and direction for Havas Media, including the creation of our platform, Converged AI, as well as working with clients to determine how we best use data and analytics. Hopefully that was 5 to 10 words.
Pretty close. Hi, everybody. Matt Spiegel. I'm with TransUnion. I've done lots of different things. Ultimately, what I do at TransUnion now, I sit as part of our go-to-market team that partners with our product team, and I help lead our go-to-market strategy. So how do we make sure we are listening to what our customers need and getting those things built, and vice versa? And I'm here to do anything I can to help that growth happen for all sides.
And I'm John Riley. I'm co-founder, co-CEO of Akkio, and we're an enterprise workflow platform for the media ecosystem, helping build production agents.
Awesome, perfect. We kept it snappy. So, okay, so first question, I do want to start with the same like high-level framing about less artificial, more intelligent. So there's a lot of AI theater going on. I'm sure we've all seen, you know, a handful of AI, or I mean, ad tech platforms using the word agentic all of a sudden, and you know, is that real? So I guess my opening question for all of you, and please jump in whenever you feel comfortable, is, you know, what are you really seeing in terms of AI theater versus applications that are really driving results, and can you share, you know, 1 or 2 examples with us?
Well, I'd be happy to. I'll go first. You know, I think what's happened is really actually kind of interesting, because a lot of the, call it theater, started with like PowerPoint, which is telling stories about how you might leverage AI to do a job. And recently, with a lot of the like workflow platforms that you can now like develop prototypes on, that theater has extended to prototyping. And prototyping has gotten really easy to do. You can stand up a prototype application in literally 10 minutes. That's actually causing some problems, because you get people telling a story of how they have 10,000 agents. These are prototype agents that can maybe sort of do a job 80% of the time, right? And you know, the gap between that and really leveraging a tool in an ecosystem for reliable use is productionizing something. And just like you hear if you're making a hardware product, and I used to work at Sonos, 90% of the work is not designing the product itself, it's designing the manufacturing to repeatedly make this product over and over, held to a standard. That's the same challenge that I think we all collectively face in adopting AI today, which is how do you repeatedly use it in a production environment at scale in order to do a job, and that's where the actual value is realized. So the early promise is there, but most of the hard work is taking it that last mile, but is actually all of the work to production.
Matt, Jamie?
I was just going to say, I think what we've seen has been really interesting, because I think it's exactly that. We see a lot of people playing around in different places and different spaces, and my role in a global role in an agency is, you know, someone in Australia creates something that's very bespoke to the way they do things in media in Australia and France and in Colombia and all over. the challenge is that productization and to build something that works universally, but also allows for that customization and allows for that local nuance. And I think where we have, where we've generally seen challenges is when we try to move from that, somebody created this amazing product locally, now we need to make it available globally. Well, there's issues with the data that underlies that, and how do we make sure that we have the right data in every place? How do we make sure that it's consistent? How do we, whether it's from a measurement perspective and taxonomy and naming, I mean, it's not the sexy part, but it's the part that makes it usable. And I think that therein is sort of the challenge of, like, to your point, yes, there may be 10,000 agents, but how many of them are actually functional and actually able to be used consistently and deliver consistently strong results? And I think that's where we are sort of seeing the shift now into not just let's create, but let's create consistently.
Yeah. I mean, there's no doubt that our industry is the devil's in the details of actually all the specific use cases, and there's it's almost impossible, I find, to see the same exact use case over and over and over again. At the macro level, that's true. Different clients have somewhat different needs. You're measuring something in a different way. I liken where we are to where we were a couple of years ago when you couldn't have a conversation in this industry and not say you had an identity graph, right? And there's a big difference. Again, we're at TransUnion in the identity resolution business, and what we would say all the time is, yes, of course, everyone has some form of an identity graph because you sit on some data and you're mapping people. That's not the same as being in identity resolution. I think we're in the same kind of curve now with all things, quote, AI. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people have some level of agents. There are probably some workflows that are automated. There are probably some prompt engines being built. But does that mean you have built a real, robust, truly agentic thing to scale? Not necessarily. And so I kind of look at it as it's part hype. But it's not like it's wrong, but we have to be very careful what you're sourcing.
To double tap on something you said, John, I think there's a lot of discussion about buy or build, that's always the question. And I think there's a lot of pressure right now to find the right solution. So there's a lot of focus on acquiring the right AI tools or capabilities. Matt, what do you think about buy or build, and like where are you seeing the biggest performance gains come from right now?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot there. I mean, listen, I have believed for a long time, almost in whatever category of this industry, that you need a partner network. The chance that any one company is going to solve all of the issues that we are dealing with by themselves is pretty crazy in my mind. And so, yeah, listen, I think we should be leaning on experts, and Akkio is certainly one of them, that are really leaning heavily into the platform layer of agentic AI and generative AI and all the things that come with it. That said, it's only one piece you need, and again, we can get into the data journey on this. John's already mentioned it. None of this works without a data underpinning. Jamie mentioned it as well. Like, it doesn't exist without that, and I think that's part of what's going on. You asked also, what are the use cases? It's interesting. I think there's an endless list of use cases, and I think most of the time, if you're certainly sitting where I sit, we see it around audience discovery, segment creation, measurement evolution, and I think there's a lot to be unpacked there. But when I talk to a lot of marketers, I'm hearing a lot of heat around actually creative automation, which I find fascinating. It's a very interesting place to start. So my sense is what's going out there is if we were to survey this room, we would get 30, 40 different answers of what the use case of choice is. But I think ultimately it's endless. I think as we really adopt true AI-based platforms, game-changing type stuff coming.
And I would just add that, you talk about buy or build, and I think it relates back to those use cases. You have to know your strength. And as media agencies, as agencies in general, we have to know our strengths, and our strengths are in activation, our strengths are in intelligence, and yes, we all, I'm at Havas, I've been many other agencies beforehand. We all have technology teams within, and I manage one, and yes, we build, we prototype. But at the same time, can we get something from prototype to industrialization as quickly as a company that does this 24/7 every day, and is hiring from different places? It's just, we have to know where our strengths lie, when to build ourselves, when to partner, when to buy something, when, it's important to look at the big picture and those use cases and figure out where do the puzzle pieces fit together? I don't think it's one or the other.
Yeah. I want to go a little deeper on that and get into your perspective as an agency leader. I guess my question is, how do you approach scaling what your best planners and buyers and analysts, experts internally already know and build on that institutional knowledge?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting, and it's not something that's easy to solve, because especially in a global network, it's, so there's so many pockets of innovation, so many pockets of somebody built an agent that just that's automated their workflow, and someone else might find that interesting, but how does that work? There is there has to be governance. I think there has to be governance around all of the things that we're working on, and there's we've discussed this recently. There's sort of, could you do a top-down, everyone must input every AI project that they're building, and it has to be reviewed by global? Sure, we could do that, but that would slow us down and piss people off, and we would be making enemies within our entire organization. There has to be some governance and framework, but there has to be room to innovate and grow locally, and then we can take the best products that we see coming out of our local markets and work with those teams to highlight their work, to globalize it. And that's where we are right now, is sort of a global framework with local adaptation. And one of the things that I think we really focus on is, how do we build those? It's about relationships. I mean, it's about, who do we know and what are they building, and how do we match those right products with things we want to globalize and clients we need to serve. So I think there's a real piece around governance that I think we don't talk about. It's like, everyone can build something, but we need to have that governance structure in order to make sure that it's really going to be functional long term.
Yeah. I want to ask a quick follow-up. Sorry, I want to stay with you. Please jump in, John and Matt here as well. But I just want to ask about how that looks in adding in the complexity of working across teams. Specifically, I wanted to ask about this headline I'm sure lots of you saw last week about Havas and Horizon, announcing this new joint venture. A big piece of news there. Like, when you're thinking about, lots of people in this room have navigated different joint ventures, M&A, whatever, deal-making situations, or just like with a partner, how do you, scale those applications and make sure you're aligned with the other group?
Yeah, I think it comes down, first and foremost, comes down to collaboration and transparency. You have to be working together. You have to be on the same page. You have to have those guidelines set out from the start about also what is everyone's role in the process. And I think that for us, as we navigate sort of the Horizon Global and the sort of working together in the partnership, we went into this with a clear understanding of what is everybody's role, how are we going to partner together, and we've got Bob Lord and Renata Spakova, and they each have a role, and they're partners together, and we have clear lanes and roles and responsibilities where we've defined how we're going to work together. And that, whether that is in a joint venture, whether that is within a company, whether that's one market and another market, whether that's with a partner, I think it's transparency, collaboration, being really upfront, and just saying what you need, and not trying to beat around the bush.
It's interesting, because I think I actually believe that the way you productionize AI applications follows pretty much the exact same process, which is to say, it's the internal data and know-how and ways of working that are relevant. And if you start without those and ask a language model to do a task, it's just like an uneducated analyst. It doesn't know the context in which it's operating. And so most of the approach to productionizing AI mirrors exactly the approach to productionizing workflows across complex environments, which means understanding localized context, allowing people to add their localized value into the context environment, so that when you're doing a job, you can refer to that. But that also means managing the structure and organization across teams, between clients, making sure that data is properly compartmentalized, understanding how one client talks versus how a different client talks. All the exact same challenges that she just described on working together with partners are the exact same challenges you have to solve in order to really productionize a global platform.
Yeah, listen, I'd add just this. As we think about doing this for ourselves, within our own walls, because we're obviously working across clients and partners, but also every company out there is undoubtedly spending a ton of time on what processes and systems should be automated within their own walls. We really think about it in 3 layers. There's what we call our one true platform, which is our core data governance layer. What are all the ways that can have all forms of AI built in from the beginning? Then you can enable product-specific builds on top of that. So we have a variety of products inside marketing and then in other categories as well, credit and fraud protection as examples. How do you build unique products in those capabilities, again, with native AI capabilities at the beginning? And then 3, it's just operational workflow value, right? Like, how do we just get our company more efficient across not the types of things we in this room think about, but could be finance or HR or legal processing, which, by the way, are all value adds to our ability to actually do the innovative stuff we want to do. Yeah. So I guess I highlight all that to say I do think one of the things our industry is struggling with is the fact that infrastructure investment is a necessary part of this journey. And we were talking about it recently where, again, you can't build AI at scale without the right data, without the right governance, without the training you just highlighted. And those things don't happen in very distinct and separate pinpricks of solutions. And so how we get this to scale is going to be through collaboration.
Okay, follow up for John. You know, when we talk about point solutions versus infrastructural solutions, can you explain the difference and why it should matter for media companies?
Yeah, you know, like I use this like analogy. If you take a product like, say, Google Agent Space, which is Google's sort of enterprise solution for workers to automate tasks that they might do on a daily basis. That's a very personalized solution, and everybody can make a language model or something do a task for them to accelerate their ability to write an email or find an answer inside of documentation. I'd say that's roughly analogous to like your driveway in your house. It's personal to you, and it's sort of in some ways custom to your needs. There are a lot of like very important workflows in every large organization that are on Rails, and they're on Rails for a reason because those workflows are and maybe they're done slightly differently depending on the need, but generally the approach is on Rails. It's a documented process. Sometimes they're run through Jira or other workflow systems, but I think of these like interstate systems where there is a high volume of use. Many different people have to do the function, so you need to be able to be trained to do the function, and then maybe you take a different job, someone else has to replace you. That's what I mean when I say production. The idea here is that, you know, also to Jamie's point, it has to be transparent and observable, but it needs to be auditable. It has to have like a large degree of user acceptance testing and validation. You have to compare it to the current way of doing things before you ship it. So that when I say like a production application, I'm talking about something like that, not like I went on Base 44 and designed an application over the weekend, not I vibe coded something together and showed it off as a demo. Both of those are very valid methods of iteration, but I would call them prototypes. In some cases, something like Agent Space gives you real value, but on a spot basis. I'm talking more about that like interstate level, high volume production workflows. And that's the, you know, I think that's where a lot of value can be. There's value on both sides. There's value to your driveway and value to the interstate. And then, you know, to torture the analogy one last time, you know, like learning to drive in your driveway certainly helps you operate a car better on the interstate. So overall, as you learn how to prompt, how to get the most value out of a language model to do a task, I think it cumulatively makes you better.
Anything else to
I mean, I guess on your last point around like, you need people. I'm gonna take your analogy and just keep going. You need people to drive those cars most of the time, unless you're in San Francisco. But you know, I think you need people to drive those cars, and you need people to drive your AI solutions. They can't just go run on their own. And I think that's also a big piece of the way we think about when we productize AI, when we roll it out across an organization. It's not, you know, we talk a lot, you know, there's lots of discussions about AI and optimization of workforces, and is it gonna, you know, take people's jobs and all those things. I think the way we've really approached it at Havas is it's in service of people, not in place of people. And I think that is really important for us to remember, is that the technology, whether that is an AI agent, whether that is you know, an insights platform, whatever it is, whether it's a CDP, you know, it doesn't matter. The whole point is technology is there to help us do our jobs better, maybe faster, maybe with more insights, maybe more robustly, but ultimately it's to help people make decisions. It's not we need those humans to be part of the process, to add that level of context and things that machines just can't do at this point.
Yeah, I am with that, with some caution.
Please.
Yeah, I think in the long term, I think you're totally right. I mean, listen, this would be the same conversation we would have had in the late 90s and early 2000s about whether the internet was real and whether the internet was going to take away all jobs, right? I mean, it sounds very similar, right? And it turns out all of us exist because it turns out different types of jobs were created. I believe fully where you're going, which is at time, that's going to happen in an AI-enabled world as well. I have more concerns in the near term, right? And I have more concerns in the near term in a world of uncertain economic times. As long as we have a robust economy and consumers are spending power is good and marketers are doing well, then it can be a very quick yes and. I do think there will likely be some time in the next 12, 24, 36 months where we're not in a yes and world and we'll be having to make choices. And so I do think there's something to be said for how are you figuring out how to embrace your use of AI to automate and facilitate your ability to get to the strategy work which the machines cannot do, right? And so I look at it as yes, and we better be careful so that we're doing both.
And I think we also have to be careful because, it's sort of like, we talked a bunch of years ago about, offshoring, and we talk about, finding efficiencies and any of the, whether it's finding efficiencies in different locations of the world, finding efficiencies, leveraging technology. We also need to make sure that the people using the technology understand how the technology works and understand how the industry works. I mean, I started my career in, those of you who remember the AWNY days, and I see one of my former AWNY friends out here. It was amazing, but I trafficked ads in Atlas. And the way I know that how the plumbing works is because I did that. And if we don't ensure that the people who are coming into the industry now know how it all works, and they just, it's great for them to be able to democratize access and, type something into a box and get an answer. That's amazing. That makes things a lot faster, but they have to know how it works. Otherwise, we just won't be able to make progress. We won't be able to innovate, and it all sort of falls apart.
Well, time flies when you're having fun, so we only have one more question, and then hopefully we'll have a couple minutes to take some audience questions, so get thinking. I'm glad you mentioned the economic pressures that marketers and media companies are under right now, because I feel like this is a vibes-based comment, not an evidence-based comment, but spending seems to be pretty strong still, although I know that the IAB just changed their projections for US market spend last week from 7.2% growth this year or something to 5.7. So we are starting to see maybe a bit of a slowdown. Obviously, lots of macroeconomic stuff happening, tariffs and Fed rate cuts and stuff that, who knows? Who knows? But my point, I guess, is with that in mind, that marketers are feeling a lot of pressure to make every dollar go farther. What is the lowest hanging fruit here? What's the one thing you'd recommend starting with? What workflow maybe? Anyone want to hop in?
I can't come to a specific workflow, but I will say that it's almost always the case. The reason we decided to found Akkio was because we needed to sort our leads at the 3D printing startup I was working at before so that we could call them most likely to convert first and work our way down the list. Once we sorted the leads like that using a classification ML model, we did a substantial increase in conversion. It was like a 30% lift. There is a lot of low-hanging fruit if you can operate on the data that is unique to your business or your environment. And being able to leverage new technology to take advantage of that data only makes your return on advertising spend better. It only makes your operations more efficient. What the exact workflow is going to be business dependent, I believe.
Yeah, I think I'm at the same point, what I think speaks to where we are in this journey, where the possibilities are endless, and there isn't necessarily a wrong place to start. It's probably worse to be doing nothing than trying something that might not pay off. Again, a framework we're also spending a lot of time thinking about it as we build our own products and talk to clients is, are we driving for efficiency? Are we trying to automate something and make it be faster cycle time? Or are we trying to increase predictability and propensity? Are we trying to create better outcomes? And you can apply those ideas to lots of workflows, and that's kind of where we are too, which is if you really want to do the creative thing, do that. If you want to do it for audience discovery, do that. If you want to make it so that you can get through your measurement process faster, again, all have massive opportunity. Try and solve some problem is where I'm at as well.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can think of a couple wrong places to start.
Okay, fair.
But but no,
Always something.
But I do think that to me the right place to start is in that foundation. And we talked about, you know, the data. Like if you don't have the right data, if it isn't organized, if it isn't clean, it doesn't matter if you're building an AI agent. It doesn't matter if you are, you know, building an incrementality model. If you don't have that, the hardest part of any of those things is getting the data. And if you don't, that's to me is the place to start, making sure you have the right data for the right task and it's organized and clean, and then you can kind of run with whatever you want to do.
I just had one thought on that because I think that's critical, and it's, you know, we've said now for years that data is the fuel of this industry, and I think now we're kind of moving on to like, well, AI is the fuel. But as those that are building a lot of these platforms know, you don't have AI without the data. Yep. And so to Jamie, the point you're making, if people are jumping to think that, well, my data house isn't really in order, but at least I can now build agents, you're going to get nowhere.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really, really critical point.
Okay, just a couple minutes. Audience questions, please throw your hand up. I think we have a mic runner. Oh, guys, don't be shy.
No one?
John bites, but the rest of us don't.
I feel like I should make a Ferris wheel.
Okay, you guys answered all their questions. Okay, amazing. Well, thank you all so much for being here. Thank you to our wonderful panelists and everyone watching online.
Thank you.
Thank you.